right, thank you so much for being here. We have our final great fireside chat before the coffee break. So really looking forward to this conversation here from Zanata and Dennis. It's going to be a really good one. So stay tuned, and I think without further ado, I'll leave it up to you to speak about decentralized enterprise solutions. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, joining us this afternoon. I'm Dennis Vlad. I'm chair of the Enterprise Blockchain Working Group. Our objective is, of course, to spread the word how good or how decentralized enterprise blockchain solutions are better than centralized blockchain solutions. That will be as well our topic here. When I talked first with Andrew, I invited him to the fireplace talk here. I realized we don't have a fire. But in the digital world, of course, everything's possible. So that is then it brings us to our topic: digital assets, digital values, digitalization of true stuff, bringing it into enterprise solutions, and how to bring them actually alive. So you are in the cryptographic space, Andrew. You are quite a veteran. And you see a real founder in that space as well, with other areas. And when you and Rolu Berry founded Zanata, what actually motivated you to do that?
So if you look at an aerospace engineer at Lockheed Martin, even if he's best of breed and the brightest person alive, he will not enjoy being able to make much impact in that sector because it's very well established. The models, the methods are all very well designed. There's not a lot of room for real growth and performance. You're kind of hitting the design limits. Since 2009, the crypto community have been running a very interesting social experiment, looking at value, looking at rights, and different networks to support these things. And as a single contributor, if you're motivated and semi-intelligent, you can have real impact and meaning in the direction that this experiment goes. So there was a real opportunity to contribute and move the needle, combined with a unique opportunity. So my co-founder, Rolu Berry, and I, well, he had identified a very niche problem within the space, and that was handling data over a ledger. And so it was a great opportunity, and it was a meaningful amount of work.
Very good. A couple of years, everybody was talking about platform industry, platform business models. The models that Airbnb and Uber and others are building on, because they were bringing peer-to-peer economy together. But that caused a new issue, which they became now today's new intermediaries and controlling these markets a little bit, and as well deciding slightly who is part of it and who is not part of it. Now, of course, when you drive that now further, then we come to decentralized business models, decentralized platforms, and I think there are clear advantages behind it. But in your opinion, what actually makes decentralized business models better than centralized business models?
So the two games we should all be familiar with is a zero-sum game and a non-zero-sum game. So a zero-sum game is a game where there's a winner and a loser, and the winner takes all. So if you look at the relationship between McDonald's and Burger King, they're very much engaged in a zero-sum game. One of them wants to win at the expense of the other. And then you have non-zero-sum games where we have to collaborate as a community to either collectively achieve our objective or collectively we fail. When you start any enterprise, and I mean, looking at the semiconductor space is a prime example. In the early days of semiconductor business, there was Texas Instruments, there was Philips. These guys were really playing zero-sum games in the market. They owned manufacture end-to-end, and they were gods unto themselves, right? But as all businesses grow, and as we grow into the future, this isn't the future business model for scale. It's collaborate or die. And when you really need to collaborate, that's the power of decentralized architectures and systems. If an insurance company and a bank want to partner together, what they don't want to do is expose each other to their private infrastructure. There's risk it's not efficient, there's duplication, there's error, it's error multiplicative. The real power of blockchain is that it enables collaboration. So as soon as your business model moves over to playing non-zero-sum games, at that point you are going to have to want to consider the efficiencies of a blockchain ecosystem. It brings transparency and efficiency. It's not about trust. Trust is a result of a good collaborative exercise. But efficiency and throughput, and transparency is really the design goal. And that's the time that you really want to bring in blockchain support.
You said the right way. It's about collaboration. I mean, that's what enterprise solutions are for. I mean, they started as solutions within an enterprise and then expanded now in intra-enterprise solutions.
Exactly.
And so when you have supply chains, for example, or enterprises to their markets and so on, there's a lot of data, critical assets, deals, trades that go back and forward and so on. And I mean, collaboration's key, important, but lately we saw a lot of these collaboration cases, especially in the trade finance area. I mean, Marco Polo or WeTrade, they were all built for improving collaborations, but they got bust basically. So what did they do wrong? Why did they do it? Why did these enterprise solutions not succeed?
Now, this is slightly speculative. But what my answer would be, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And I think they were sort of premature in trying to understand how this all works. What really makes for a bad enterprise adoption of blockchain is where you try to take your legacy system and then kind of just sort of naively map it one for one into a blockchain setting. If you do that, what tends to happen is you inherit everything that you hated about your centralized business, combined with everything that people hate about blockchain systems. And then you get the worst of both worlds. What you really have to look at is utility, infrastructure, and business case. And if you can map these three things faithfully into kind of a Web3 stack, you'll succeed. And if you don't, you fail. And most people don't appreciate how these three things work together. So although they have good intentions and it's a good use case, the execution and moving into production fails. I'll give you one just very quick example. So if you're thinking of what I call the radio business model, radio is a public good. Everyone likes to listen to radio programs, music, weather reports, but there's no monetization in this public good. So you couple it with a private good like advertising. That's the only really way to kind of make money off it. And the infrastructure players are these monolithic, huge masts and broadcasters that run the network. Okay? That's the old model. And if you're running that kind of business, you need to change the way you think about your utility, your infrastructure, and your business model to succeed when doing things like consortia or group initiatives or bringing a value chain onto a blockchain. How are you using decentralized infrastructure at a node level to facilitate trade in a layer one or something like that? What is the utility you're trying to draw from it? And then what is your business model, which should be moving more towards something like as a service. Mm-hmm. And what you then get is a more efficient market and marketplace than you would with the old system. And if you achieve that, you will succeed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in the enterprise working group, we worked on a paper. Actually, it turned out to be a book at the end. Talking about the different success factors. And what you just mentioned, there were as well 3 success factors that we see. It is the business case. There need to be an economic value. And there are many cases, I guess, that where you have to say, well, is that now really an economic value behind it? Especially when you try to replace the incumbent, that is a little bit difficult because usually the incumbent is already quite successful and quite efficient in the market. But it is the cases where you do something new and where you do something special. But we came there as well with a 3rd business case behind it, and that is a strategic business case. And it comes back to that point of collaboration that you said before. In a decentralized model, like that you build on blockchain, you keep the partners in a market environment where they are competing with each other and where they are interacting decentralizedly with each other, which then leads to a better market performance. How do you see that point, and how is, for example, Zenota supporting that?
It's when you think about something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, what people tend to focus on is the protocol layer, and there's lots of support at the protocol layer. What's really, really important is to deeply understand and impact the infrastructure layer. What you really want to get to is something that's kind of like as a service. So in economics, let's say there are three major arms or verticals that you want to think about: payment, finance, and trade. Everything that gets handled and processed by a layer one tends to work very well. It's very resilient. And if you look at what happened with FTX as an example, FTX didn't disprove Ethereum or Bitcoin. The smart contract universe and the payment universe survived at protocol layer. They were resilient. The problem was that FTX was structuring trade not at a layer one, but at a layer two and layer three. So they were able to do things like shadow leveraging assets. It wasn't efficient and transparent. So one of the kind of missing key factors is thinking about trade at a layer one level. So we see a move from centralized exchanges to DEXs, but that isn't progressive enough. That's still handling it at layer two and layer three. We need to see trade-enabled functionality come all the way down to layer one, because then you have a full product life cycle that's efficient, autonomous, disintermediated, from making a payment into a financial instrument for investment, and then the trading of the final product for or goods or services for the Coinbase. At that point, you will have a kind of an end-to-end tool chain. So that's the first aspect that we focus very much on. That's why we at Zenota have introduced a two-way entry ledger to enable trade within the blockchain. Mm-hmm. And then going down to node support, it shouldn't be that that massive conglomerate of miners are responsible for all things. Enterprise still need to kind of have a way to own the client or offer a value-added service. But how do you think about that as a node operator? So where's that Uniswap node that you can personally run to list your assets for your clients, right? So there has to be a better architecture for engaging more public infrastructure roles, but private business roles, and all of this needs to be supported at node level. So our second kind of major innovation is looking at the infrastructure layer that supports Web3.
Mm-hmm. In the essence of enterprise solutions is always data. I mean, at the end, it is giving data, giving access to data, blueprints to suppliers, and these kind of things. Putting data on the blockchain is always a little bit a difficult thing. First of all, there's a capacity limitation, of course. Second of all, it is something, I mean, it's data, it's intellectual property, it is personal data that I want to protect as well. It's probably not something I want to have distributed on a totally public network layers in multiple ways and so on. And I think that is, as it is in my experience, always some critical questions that the enterprises came and said, well, you know, do I really want to share my data and spread my data across the planet and so on. But your solution is built on blockchain. So what would you respond to such enterprises that have worries about their data?
The data issue is very profound and deep. So firstly, data has a different regulatory framework than finance does. So in finance, you have a reporting responsibility. The more transparent and public you are, the better. And this is the opposite with data. With data, you have GDPR issues in Europe. You have CCPA, HIPAA, PECR issues in the US. And this will continue to be the trend, and it's good that it happens this way. So what you're saying is that you need to somehow find a way for data to be handled privately, but still ownable and act as an asset. And then at the same time, you want your payments for that to be sort of a public matter financial reporting obligation being met and all the rest of it. So what you're going to do is you're going to have to think out a clever way to separate digital rights management from data management. So the data management is the act of physically copying, let's say, a JPEG or a song from my computer to your computer. That needs to happen in a private network. But the proof that the ownership is being transferred, that needs to be registered on a public network. And by staring at the public network entry, I should learn nothing about the private network data. These are the building blocks to a successful solution. Because then you have a blockchain that is both GDPR compliant for data, but financially compliant for reporting, tax, and all the rest of it.
So what you're saying, actually, it's a mixture. On one side for the exchange, the trade, the track for the legal contract that is probably behind the data exchange. We use the blockchain, but for the data exchange itself, there's a different layer that we're going to use.
Absolutely. So, I mean, in a very loose kind of thinking, as our discussion earlier, you're going to be wanting to look at a private messaging layer and a kind of a public transaction handling processing layer. And you can push your data through your private messaging layer, but claim ownership of it from the public transaction layer. Mm-hmm. The one other comment I will make, though, and this is the real difficult problem to solve with data. Data doesn't flow the way a currency flows. So, I mean, we can argue whether Bitcoin or F is a currency or not, but even the US dollar is supply roughly fixed. Yes, the Fed can print more currency, but these are in exceptional circumstances. So from day one to day two, the amount of dollars remain roughly constant. The utility comes from cycling it very fast. Data doesn't behave like that. You might make 400,000 data entries on your email before breakfast. You might want to delete half of them, and you might circulate none of them. So the flow of data and the movement of data is different to the flow of currency. And why I say that is, if you have a performance blockchain that's built to handle currency flow, that doesn't mean it's equipped to handle data flow. So that's why the theory is great, but the implementation is where the rubber meets the road.
Data is a different asset than currencies. I think that
absolutely, and it needs to be handled so at the network layer.
Yeah. So there's some questions from the audience. So you would like to ask a question, please?
You mentioned the three critical dimensions: utility, infrastructure, and business case. But there is one dimension that I like your thought on, is that the business case, no matter how much time you spend on it, how much details you collect, you gather, you crunch, the reality is that most of the project, the change management bit has an heavy influence on your failure or success. I was at a presentation of a Walmart representative who said 80% of the project effort was spent on the people, process, collaboration, the change management bit. So what's your thought on that element as well? Because you're changing radically the way you work when shifting from a traditional model into the new world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what you're really trying to do now, I say this with deep respect and as a proponent of the crypto community, we have sort of traditional thinking, and then I would classify a lot of the early crypto enthusiasts from 2009 to maybe 2012 as kind of postmodernists. The argument was, who needs regulation, who needs compliance, the protocol will fix it, it'll all be magic. But now we're entering a phase of kind of neoclassical deployment. We've kind of learned that well-structured regulation is actually kind of good because we're talking about consumer protection. And the reason I mention this is what you're trying to achieve is a functional equivalence. So there needs to be a notion of custody. Somebody needs to hold something. But that doesn't mean that I need a bank to be the custody partner. I can use my self-custody solution. So what you want to do is you want to look by function at what the business case is doing, and then finding a good functional equivalence fit that you meet those objectives. I'm not trying to propose. The reason the world got into a sort of a hot financial mess in 2008 and 2009 is people were trying to come up with more exotic and bizarre financial instruments to shake more money out of the market. the Frank Dodd Act and what happened in the wake of that was saying, no, 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 no. We need to go back to a more traditional financial instrument layer. We need to report things in a more responsible way. Crypto was supposed to be the renaissance. It was supposed to be the savior of the old issue about these like hokey, weird financial instruments. But what you see a lot of in the crypto space are these peculiar instruments that no one really knows what to do with. Is it a stable coin? Does it have legally enforceable claims? How do we think about it? So it's kind of just reinventing this issue of not really knowing what you're dealing with. So take your traditional business. It's probably good as a concept. And then swap functional equivalents out to rebuild it in a good Web3 stack so that you have the efficiency and performance kicker, but you're not risking the core business elements.
Good. Then time's already up. I don't want to hold back people from the coffee break that is now starting. I thank you very much, Andrew, for taking the time, for giving us some more insights in the new, I would say, the new asset, which is the data. And I hope next year on Crypto Valley Conference we have more topics as well about these things, not only AML and all the money things. No, and so thank you very much, and quite excited to see how the journey continues.
Dennis, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah.